Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
Now, does Labour have a problem dealing with allegations of anti-Semitism? The party is worried enough to have established an inquiry into the Labour Club at Oxford University, where there are accusations that members used off-colour language to describe Jewish people. And the Sunday Politics has been told that the investigation will now look at new claims from another university. It comes after an activist with controversial views was allowed back into the party, then promptly chucked out again last week. Here's our Adam.
Does Jeremy Corbyn's support for causes like the Palestinians or Stop the War mean he's not tough enough when there are allegations of anti-Semitism in Labour? It's seen that way by some students at Oxford. Last month, the vice chair of the Labour Club there resigned, claiming some members had a problem with Jews and used words like Zio, a nickname for Jewish people that many find offensive. It's now being investigated by the Labour peer Baroness Royal, who's also looking at the wider issue of behaviour in Labour youth politics. We understand she's now extended her investigation to include students at the London School of Economics. This week they've been electing a new General Secretary for the Students' Union here. One of the candidates, Rayhan Houdin, who's also in the Labour group, has been criticised for some Facebook posts that emerged during the campaign. In one, he talked about leading Zionists wanting to take over the student union to make it right-wing and Zio again. He's since apologised for his use of language, writing in another Facebook post, "It's utterly repugnant to me to think I may have unwittingly appeared to endorse in any way the foul ideology of anti-Semitism." He's been referred to Labour's investigation into student politics by someone who now works for an MP. We've seen the letter they wrote, which said, "Labour does not accept hostility towards any other minority, but when it comes to Jews, there seems to be a total lack of consequence." But isn't all this just a case of students behaving badly? Well, yes and no. Because it was an older generation of activists that came up at Prime Minister's questions this week.
I was completely appalled to see yesterday that the Labour Party has readmitted someone to their party who says, and I believe, that the 9/11 suicide bombers, and I quote, must never be condemned, and belongs to an organisation that says we defend the Islamic State in Syria and Iraq. Those are appalling views.
He was referring to Jerry Downing, who'd also blogged about what he called the Jewish question. After being readmitted to the party, this week he was re-suspended. He reckons it's really a battle between different wings in Labour. You've said there's a conspiracy, there's people out to get Jeremy Corbyn. Who are they?
Well, Dan Jarvis and these people, of course, obviously. There is the whole Blairite wing of the party and others who have been absolutely disgusted at the membership and the left-wing surge in the membership and can't believe what happened.
And do you think they're using race and religion as a tool for that?
Of course they are, yes.
Whereas the Labour MP, Wes Streeting, says there is a problem with the left.
I think in certain parts of the British left there has always been a virulent form of pretty bigoted politics, particularly in terms of anti-Semitism, which has been an issue on some of our university campuses and parts of the Labour Party. There is also a mentality which I think has been epitomised by the repulsive views of Mr. Downing, which is not so much stop the war as stop the West. People who seem to hate their country more than they hate the people who would attack us. And we have got to start sending a far stronger message that this is simply not acceptable in the modern Labour Party.
At any level,
Jeremy Corbyn's supporters, like those in the grassroots campaign group Momentum, say none of this is fair on him.
Corbyn comes on the most incredible level of attacks, and one of the things that he's attacked for is his long-standing commitment to anti-war, anti-imperialism, peace in the Middle East. And I think that's where some of this comes from. He does absolutely condemn anti-Semitism and has time and time again. There is not a shred of anti-Semitism in his personal makeup, in his moral makeup, or in his political makeup.
And as for Labour's investigation into anti-Semitism among students, there's no time frame for when it'll report.
Let's speak now to the Labour MP, John Mann. He's chair of the all-party parliamentary group against anti-Semitism, and he's in Berlin at, fittingly enough, an anti-Semitism conference. John Mann, welcome to the programme. Is there an anti-Semitism problem in the Labour Party?
Well, of course there is. That's why these issues have got attention. It's not a big problem, but a small problem when it comes to racism needs to be dealt with. And we've been here before. I mean, I can recall 30 years ago when there were extremists trying to ban Jewish societies in some of the universities, and we clamped down on them very hard then, and they weren't in the Labour Party, but it's the same kinds of people, the same ideology. Some of that's crept into the Labour Party, and it needs to be removed.
Why has it come back?
Oh, well, we could spend... people could write big academic books on why it's resurged, but what we've seen over history is that anti-Semitism never seems to go away.
But why in the Labour Party, I mean? Why in the Labour Party has it come back?
Well, people have obviously chosen to associate with the Labour Party in the growth of membership. Some of those people have attitudes that are very outdated, that are prejudiced. There's no space for them in the Labour Party, and the reason that's so important is because I'm getting young Jewish activists questioning whether the Labour Party is the place for them in terms of their support, their vote and their activity. And we cannot tolerate a situation where any part of society doesn't feel that a major political party like the Labour Party is not the place for them, which is why prompt, effective action and vigilance on this is required, including from Jeremy as the leader of the Labour Party.
Well, is the Labour leader doing enough? Or the fact that he's talked about his friends in Hamas and Hezbollah and shared platforms with people who've been very hostile to Israel and so on, is that a disadvantage? Is that encouraging anti-Semitism, or is it not relevant?
Well, I've met Jeremy recently to discuss anti-Semitism and the Labour Party, and it's clear to me that he does not tolerate or support it, but what he has to do is follow that through with actions and ensure that others in the Labour Party follow it through with actions, because the kind of thing and the atmosphere that's been created in Oxford University is not a one-off. This has been happening elsewhere as well. And while these can be seen as small incidents, if you're the young Jewish person who's impacted by it, it's not small for you, and it's magnified in the universities, which are pretty tolerant places, and rightly so, if there's intolerance to any particular group and to Jewish students. We're not prepared to have that in the Labour Party. There has to be action, it has to be led from the front, and it has to be decisive action. There's no space for these people, these intolerant anti-Semites in the Labour Party, or is there space for people in any way excusing their actions?
But there is an inquiry into what's been going on at Oxford. We understand now one at the LSE as well. But is your party doing enough about this? Because I understand that these inquiries may be subsumed into a much bigger inquiry about bullying and so on. What's your feeling?
Well, it's action by results. If there isn't decisive action, there will be an almighty row, which wouldn't be helpful. But the idea that those of us who fought over decades challenging anti-Semitism and other forms of racism are going to accept other than the highest of standards in our own party, well, I can tell you it's going to happen. There are many of us who will only accept absolutely the highest standards. We're not prepared to tolerate any form of anti-Semitism or any excuse for it in the Labour Party, or frankly anywhere else in society. But in our own party, absolutely not. And therefore, there has to be action. Words aren't good enough.
Historically, John Mann, the Labour Party has done well from the Jewish vote. The Jewish vote over time has tended to vote Labour. If this anti-Semitism continues in your party, are you in danger of losing the Jewish vote?
Well, we prepared a report 10 years ago on a cross-party basis that highlighted anti-Semitism in all its aspects, including from the right, but also what was described by some as the new anti-Semitism on the left. In fact, it's not new, but it had been dormant for a long period of time. People had been accustomed to the Labour Party and that part of the left being highly tolerant to everybody. That has to happen. You cannot have a progressive party of any substance in politics if it allows any form of intolerance, and therefore we're not prepared to have second-class citizens, a second-class form of racism allowed in the Labour Party. Anti-Semitism has to be challenged, including anti-Semitism on the left, and done so robustly and put back in it to speak again. That's my intention and others in the Labour Party. I'm looking forward to Jeremy, the National Executive, the leadership of the Labour Party, being decisive, removing the anti-Semites, going into where there is intolerance and explaining what is anti-Semitism and why we're not prepared to have it in our party.
John Mann in Berlin, thanks for joining us this morning.
I've been